Well, college football is the gift that keeps on getting it. I mean, even in the off season, we don't really get an off season. Is the Pac going to dissolve? Is the ACC going to disband? Man, everything's up in the air right now, isn't it? Hi, everyone. I'm Joey Foster. Golden Blue Dude is not feeling well. Don't worry, because I have a great guest for you coming in, and you guys are going to want to stick around for it. I promise you. You'll be really happy. He hasn't got here yet, and he will be here probably in the next five or 10 minutes or so. But so I got a great guest coming on for you. Matter of fact, I have a couple of them tonight. So everybody stick around. But anyway, let's talk about this mess right now in the Pac-12, okay? Has anybody been on Twitter and seen the Twitter war between Pac-12 and Big 12? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you go on there and read some of that stuff, and man, I tell you what, I was floored the way people are talking to each other. You know, and the thing about it is, it's not even Big 12 and Pac-12 people. It's freaking people from other conferences talking about it. I mean, there are Big 12 and Pac-12 people on there, but I mean, literally, some of the people that are getting nasty aren't even from either of the conferences. You know, they're Big 10 or SEC or ACC fans. So it's crazy. But anyway, so I've got somebody backstage. We'll bring him with you guys, and he's kind enough to join us tonight, and I really appreciate him a lot. What do you say, Mark?
Joey, what's going on?
What's happening, buddy? So I'm sitting here telling everybody that college football is a gift that keeps on giving. That, you know, it even in the off season, we've got plenty of content. Golden Blue Dude put out a video today. I can't remember the title of it. Something about the Pac-12. And that thing had 2,000 views in an hour. It was over 2,000 views in an hour, almost 2,500. And I was like, wow, you know, this is the off season. That's a video that happens in the regular season.
Yeah, people want to know what's going to go down with the Pac-12 and the Big 12, and now with Florida State making noise in the ACC, and what that's all going to look like.
Yeah, I was on listening to Pigskin Pete and them earlier talking about the ACC and things, and about Florida State and Clemson leaving. Pete put out a video today about Clemson possibly leaving the ACC. I hear all kinds of stuff, and I don't know if you know or not, but I hear all kinds of things about numbers, that Florida State did the numbers and they can get out for $120 million, right? But then I hear, well, that's just the exit fee. That's not the grant of rights. Do you know anything about that? And correct me if I'm wrong. If they was to leave and go to, say, the SEC, that's ESPN too. So the grant of rights would just carry over with them, right? I mean, that's money from the network. I guess the ACC would be out though. So yeah, I can understand it, but.
Yeah, so a lot of this all depends on how much you believe that ESPN controls the situation versus the individual conference, and how that balancing act plays out. I saw the same thing. So when Mike Alford, the Florida State athletic director, met with the Board of Trustees last week, he basically laid it out to say, hey, we are falling behind fast. We need to do something about it. So nothing was stated there initially about leaving the conference. Of course, his proposal was, let's get some more money from the ACC and lay it out for them to say, hey, we're pulling in better TV numbers than everybody else except maybe Clemson. I think they do have the best numbers over the last 10 years, and Clemson's number 2. And then there's a pretty good drop off after those two. And the numbers I saw, of course, with 14 teams, if you do the math, 14 times 7% is 98%. So they roughly get 7% of the revenue for the conference, and they account for over 15% of the TV revenue coming in, at least their games. And here's a point of contention here. So it's been proven by a number of people, and Tony Altomore would be the most recent that I know of, but I've seen it from other sources as well. And this is how I would fight it if I was in another ACC school, is that a lot of those TV ratings have to do with, of course, Florida State and Clemson are going to get the primary spots because of who they are. But also, it's been proven that regardless of who's in those primary spots, they're going to get better TV ratings. So I'm sticking my hand up if I'm Boston College or Duke or Syracuse to say, yeah, but that's not necessarily fair because whomever gets slotted in the 3:30 ABC or ESPN slot or the primetime slot over the ACC network slot, they do better anyway. So anyway, yeah, Florida State's obviously got a beef there, and they want to compete for national championships, and they just see. And I saw in one of the articles that they were being cited $30 million deficit, but by my calculations, it would be more than that in comparison to the Big Ten and the SEC, because they kick in with over $1 billion overall contract for the Big Ten and over $800 million for the SEC. And if you break it down, it's in the $90 million range, I think, when it's all put together. Regardless, they're falling behind year by year by a ton. But to answer your question about the grant of rights, there are so many conflicting reports from legitimate, reliable sources, but the legal people say, hey, this thing is airtight. Nobody's going to get out of it. My initial thought is, okay, if a contract's going to be broken and the amount of money to break the contract is lessening every year, you get closer to the end of the contract, then these schools are going to figure out at what point is a good point to cut loose and say, you know what, we'll bite the bullet because we can make 60 million more in the SEC or the Big Ten per season. Right. But in terms of that legality of beyond that, you got me.
Well, I was thinking about that too. And I was thinking about what Travis said. You know, he's read the contract. We're talking about Travis Kenobi, guys. He's read the contract. He's a brilliant lawyer. And he said that, you know, that this thing's virtually unbreakable, that it's only a few pages long, not like a regular contract. And that makes it tougher to beat it. But here's my thought is precedents set when they let Maryland go. So there's precedents there for somebody to leave the conference.
When who left?
When Maryland left.
Oh.
So
well, Maryland and Rutgers, but Rutgers was coming out of the Big East. But
yeah, right.
That's a great question because their first season in the Big Ten was 2014. I believe they left in 2012 is when they made the decision. I don't know, when did that grant of rights, when did that go into effect?
I don't know, because I thought it was 2015, and then somebody told me today it's 2016, and then I heard somebody say 2014. Okay. Either way, well, I guess Maryland has been out before.
Yeah, I know that they had to pay a ton of money to get out, but I don't know that the ACC really locked in this grant of rights with all the legalities. I think it was just a straight exit fee from Maryland, and I might be wrong on that, but that's my understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, and as far as I know, they're still paying it. They had to borrow it from the Big Ten or something, and pay it back.
And can you imagine? They still are not getting an equal cut from the Big Ten. Neither one of those schools, almost 10 years later.
Right. Yeah,
and they still have to pay all that money back.
So talking about, guys, we're talking about the ACC and the Pac-12 here. I'm joined by Mark Rogers from the Voice of College Football. I think everybody here knows him, but nobody needed an introduction to Mark. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn my camera off because I know buffering, and I know I'm breaking up. So I turn my camera off so that maybe I'll keep doing that. But Mark, appreciate you joining us here. Let's talk a little bit about the Pac-12 as well, because we know the Big Ten had announced a long time ago they was closed up right now. They're not going to take anybody else. You know, in Oklahoma, Oregon, and Washington were asking about the Big Ten. The Big Ten more or less just told them no, not right now. They didn't tell them no. They just told them not right now. So Now there's this talk out of the Pac-12. They can't get a television deal together. That it's going to be streaming service on Apple. Not everybody has Apple, you know. But I heard today that Fox was still in the running there. That Fox is still in talks with them. So I don't know about that. But you talk about the going streaming, and you're talking about Apple products only. That's to kill television in the Pac-12, if you ask me. A lot of people use Android. Probably 9 out of 10 people use Android.
Yeah, so we had a great discussion about this on our USC show last night with Matt Zemek. So, folks, we got a USC channel. Head on over there if you have any interest in USC football, and if you're just a college football nerd that wants to keep track of everyone. But here are my thoughts on this. There are some advantages to locking in with one particular company, and Apple is one of the big. What is there's some kind of term for it, like a big 5 or a big 6, Apple, Amazon, and there's a few others. Anyway, so the only advantage I see there is if you're a Pac-12 junkie and you want everything Pac-12, well, then going forward that from a streaming situation that you're going to have to lock in on this Apple deal. And you're going to have to be able to access it. But you're going to get, once you do that, you've got everything. But that's the only advantage I can think of. You've got a partnership with one. If you're the Pac-12 and nobody else is going to find you, it's going to be difficult for other people, especially when you don't have that much pull to begin with. It would be one thing if the SEC went and hit on Amazon or Apple TV and people sought it out. There's going to be a lot of fringe college football fans or serious college football fans that just want to watch the best games, and they enjoy watching the Pac-12. But if it's going to be a problem, an issue, if it's going to be an obstacle, a challenge to go find it, then they're just going to watch the other games that are more accessible. People are creatures of habit, and they're going to do what they're accustomed to doing, and you've got to give them an overwhelming reason to stop doing what they typically do. But that would be the one example of a benefit to that. Again, would be if you love the Pac-12 and you go to the one platform and you're ready to roll, and that's all you need, and you know that you're locked in. But there could be some diversity coming in this contract by way of, we've heard Ion, we've heard, of course, Apple, we've heard a slice on Amazon, but it's not going to be much, it doesn't seem. I've heard like maybe one upper tier that the Amazon folks are not going to buy into getting the worst Pac-12 games based on what I've seen, that they would want a prime Pac-12 game. So, and they may be good with that and say, hey, we don't need the Colorado games. We want the best game of the week, or at least one of the 2 or 3 best games of the week is what I've heard from Amazon, and just really showcase that game as, hey, this is our Pac-12 game of the week. So, George Kliavkoff, I was impressed with the hiring of him, even though I didn't know much about him. Once I read his background, considering what a debacle Larry Scott was and what a disaster he was, and how he really left this conference in shambles and a competitive disadvantage, that I thought Kliavkoff was a upgrade. And maybe it was just bad timing, bad luck, but it seems to have been his strategy to let all the other major conferences negotiate and fill the slots. And I don't know what he was waiting for to jump in last, but now he's there to pick up the crumbs. And it's not a great situation for the Pac-12 because they're really not needed at this point.
Yeah, I agree. You look at the four corners. If they do jump ship, or just 2 of them, let's just say 2 of them jump ship. If Arizona and Arizona State say, okay, we're out of here, we're going to the Big 12. There will be nothing left of the Pac-12. There would be 4 Power 5 programs gone. out of a Pac-12 that wasn't that strong to start with. You know, I mean, you had Oregon, Washington, and USC. But over the years, USC's been there a little bit, and now they're coming back with Lincoln Riley. They're doing really well. I'm wondering, Arizona and Arizona State, they're not powerhouses in football by any stretch of imagination. They could be replaced a lot faster and easier than USC and UCLA leaving. But at the same time, when you water down the conference even more, and they're going to be wanting to get back to probably to 12 or 14 teams, you know, that means they would have to add a few. But that's not saying that anybody's coming to the Big 12. I'm just curious. Would you see it destroying the Pac-12, or would you see them being able to carry on if they would, if a couple of them would come out and join the Big 12?
So if what seems to be about a 90% certainty happens and SMU and San Diego State join the Pac-12 and make it the Pac-12 again, then they turn around and lose Arizona State. They're down to 10. And from a quantity standpoint, we could compare that to what the Big 12 has operated with for the last 10 years. But from a quantity or from a quality standpoint and from a brand name standpoint, you know, nobody in that conference, all due respect to Oregon and Washington, can compete with Oklahoma and Texas. So the Big 12, a stronger conference over the last 10 years, despite only having 10 teams, than what we would see from the Pac-12. And we would need to see a lot of growth out of San Diego State and especially SMU. I really don't know how much. If you're a college football junkie in Southern California and you really want to root for a hometown team, maybe you're a USC, UCLA fan, but I can't imagine that you're jumping ship. You're probably excited that they're going to the Big Ten and all the huge matchups that you're going to now see. So San Diego State, I got to think, is important for the Pac-12 to get. They have to fill that void in Southern California. There's just too many football players down there. There's too many students. There's too much population. That's a must get for them. But I don't think it does much from a football playing standpoint. San Diego State's been a really good Mountain West team, but to compete at the next level, that doesn't help them. And
Yeah.
SMU
Well, Pac-12's kind of been the I don't know how to say this. They've been the whipping post of the last two big decisions they've made, and that was, number one, they decided not to expand. Number two, they decided to wait for a television contract and let everybody else finish theirs first. And actually, number three, you know, they let USC and UCLA get out of there without knowing it. So, I mean, some of their decisions, I'm not understanding their decisions at all, especially waiting till the last minute for a television contract and saying, we'll get what's left. And, you know, there's very little left.
The only strategy I could come up with that makes a little bit of sense would be that they thought, okay, we're going to see how much all these other conferences can draw, and maybe we're obviously not going to get as much, but maybe we're going to be able to value ourselves higher and say, well, we bring this much value. The Big Ten got 1.1 billion. We're worth 300 million or whatever, that they could weight themselves against, like a market that's gone crazy. But in a time when the future of the economy is uncertain, and you know, these networks, they're throwing around money, but they're also on tight budgets, and they're counting their pennies, and they're going to throw money at value. And man, it was just a strategigical misfire by the Pac-12 completely, because there's only so much inventory to go around. And to think that, you know, they should have staked their claim to certain times during the day and tried to sell themselves to some of these networks and said, you know, we'll give you value at, pick the time, 3:30 in the afternoon, 7 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night. we'll give you value there, especially 10 o'clock at night, because nobody else is going to want to be playing that slot. You would think that if anything, the Pac-12 would want to sell themselves as the final game of the night, even if it's not going to draw the ratings of a 3:30 game Eastern or a primetime game, that they would want to be on one of the big networks at 10 o'clock at night and at least say, hey, we are, we're the game that closes down college football. And for those people that stay up late or on the West Coast, of course, we can lock that down. I just, they completely misfired there, because, these networks, they see a recession coming and they put their money in the value, and now there's probably not much money left. So that's why they're having to go elsewhere.
So I know that a lot of people say, well, Mark Rogers is a Big Ten guy, and you probably know more about the Big Ten than anything else. But I want to switch it over to the Big Ten a little bit and talk to you about that, because with USC and UCLA coming into the Big Ten, how watered down will that conference be? I don't mean by watered down as far as weakness. I mean by money. If like Oregon and Washington come in too, so you've already got USC and UCLA coming in. I know that there's money in the contract, but I don't know how much money is in the contract set aside for Power 5 program to join the Big Ten.
Okay, so wait a minute. You're talking about how strong is the Pac-12 going to be without Oregon and Washington?
No, I'm talking about the Big Ten.
Yeah.
All right, with the Big Ten right now. So what's going to keep it? I don't want to see the Big Ten get watered down, and I don't mean by weakness of anything. I don't mean by weakness by the powers of the teams. I mean by money, to where these teams are in there and they're making this much money. If something happens and Oregon and Washington do end up in Big Ten, you add two more. How much money is in the contract for them? Do you know?
Yeah. So I think there's a few factors that cause these conferences to move. And of course, the SEC and the Big Ten own the chessboard. So when they look at any particular school, they're doing exactly what you're talking about. They're saying, okay, currently our schools will be making X number of dollars. Once we add these schools, then they're probably going to their network television partners and saying, if we add these schools, what does this look like? And how much does this raise the value of the entire conference? And then once we distribute it, what's that going to look like? Exactly. So, Oregon and Washington have to bring roughly $80 to $90 million of value per year as television teams. And I don't know what that looks like, but I got to think that the Big Ten, this is what the Big Ten priorities are. It's first and foremost that they're looking at the value of the team versus how much they distribute to the rest of the league, because Illinois wants to say, okay, this is going to cost us $7 million a year. We don't need Oregon and Washington to take a bite out of our athletic revenue. The other thing would be that I do believe that we may be in a place where, other than Notre Dame, possibly, that the SEC and the Big Ten are good for now and good for a while, depending on what happens to the ACC in 2036. That if the ACC can hold together until 2036, and this grant of rights is actually as strong as some people believe it is, the ACC has 12 years to figure out, what are we going to do in 2036? Because we're going to have to hold on to the likes of Florida State and Clemson and Miami and North Carolina and all these teams that can make all this extra money. So I believe that we could be in a settling place unless one of the two big powers makes a move. So if the SEC would grab a couple ACC teams, or if the Big Ten gets Notre Dame and then they want to pair somebody with Notre Dame like Stanford, not that Stanford's going to move the needle from a football standpoint, but from an academic and endowment standpoint, I think that those two leagues play off of each other. And I think we saw it with Oklahoma and Texas, that the SEC was getting out of the reach of the Big Ten, and the Big Ten went to the West Coast. And if the SEC would make another move, or the Big Ten, that the other one would be prompted to try to match it.
I think talking about the ACC, if the ACC wants to save itself, they need to somehow figure out a way to get Notre Dame to come in full time in football, and then that'll raise the money over there for sure. And Florida State and Clemson won't go anywhere.
So, yeah, I don't know how the
John
ACC
Marzullo,
would get Notre Dame.
Yeah, I know. John Marzullo, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Great supporter of this channel, and he's a Pitt fan. He says, anyone else noticed that the graphic shared by FSU the other day excluded ACC network viewership? Majority teams have their games on there. Yeah, so you're saying the ACC network viewership wasn't on the chart they shared. I didn't see the chart, so, but I take your word for it. So
I'll tell you one thing, Joey. If I were the Big Ten outside of Notre Dame, you know what's two schools I would go after? It would be Florida State and Miami.
Yeah, but
I've been saying that for 2 years.
Miami don't have AAU status, do they?
I'm sorry, they don't have AAU?
AAU status. I don't think so.
They don't, but Nebraska does not either. I think that's Miami's got a great school, but they're not strong on research. And I think that the Big Ten could be convinced in some ways to do that. I just think that the Big Ten has everything in the world going for it, except for there are not enough players. There's not enough talent in the footprint outside of Southern California now, but there's not enough players. And if they go to Florida, I would go to Florida, lock down that state, grab the two best programs, and then you've got all your biggest teams from the Midwest going down to Florida on a regular basis. And I just think that would be a recruiting coup for the Big Ten.
It would be. So I had someone in the back room, and I was getting ready to bring them in, and they dropped out. They just came in. They might have been having some trouble. So, yeah, I agree with you now, because that would give them a good recruiting base down there. But would they take both? And would both go together? I don't know. Those Florida schools, you know, like the SEC is always saying, they would take one of those Florida schools, but they wouldn't take them both because they already have Florida. But the Big Ten don't have anybody, so they would probably take them both. But and what about Clemson?
I'm sorry, you cut out there, Joey. What about who?
What about Clemson?
Yeah, so the academic side of this is important to the Big Ten. And based on everything that I've soaked up in terms of information about academic status, Florida State and Miami, they would be mid-tier schools in the Big Ten. They would fit in nicely, and Clemson would not. So how much that factors into it, some people don't think very much. I happen to think it means a great deal. I think the Big Ten would be more apt to go get Notre Dame and Stanford.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Notre Dame and Stanford would make great additions to the Big Ten. We don't know any of this is going to happen, of course. I mean, we're believe me, I'm the last one that likes to sit and play the Twilight Zone and act like we're somewhere else, because I don't know what's going to happen. You know, I don't like to speculate. That's what I'm trying to say. But you know, when my mom always said that it's not over till the fat lady sings, and she's humming right now over in the Pac-12 with all this news reports coming out. You know, we had some of these news reports coming out about the Big Ten. At the same time, though, back when they were trying to get their television contract, that it wasn't looking good, and that people had backed out, and that didn't bode well for the Big Ten. Then all of a sudden, they come out with this record-breaking contract. So I don't think that happening in the Pac, but I know a lot of people draw reference to that and say, well, the Big Ten, they had people back out of the contract there too. So, but I'm going to get over to the chat here and see what a few people are saying. So Tim's in here now. See Tim. Let's see what Will says. I think FSU gets out by arguing something related to the combination of COVID, NIL, and the transfer portal changing college football so much that their other deal is invalid. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that'd be a valid argument, really. So there's another one who says, I've talked to a lot of FSU fans who think they could get out of the grant of rights because they want to. Well, I don't know. Mark touched on that. Mark worked at ESPN for 20 years. How likely would ESPN say, okay, let's rewrite the contract, number one, and okay, let's let FSU out without the grant of rights?
Well, with all due respect, anytime somebody cites that a bunch of fans said X, Y, or Z, I don't necessarily buy into that because fans are saying all sorts of things and making all sorts of things up because they don't know, depending on who they are. Again, I can't speak to the grant of rights, but legal people that, you cited Travis Kenobi. He thinks that this thing is ironclad and written in such a way that it is nearly unbreakable. I don't think anything's impossible. And I've always thought that any contract is breakable. Shoot, we see them in college football every day with these coaches going back and forth and breaking contracts. Shoot, how many coaches have we seen leave one team that they coached last season? And I'm talking about assistant coaches, go to a new team, only stay there for 3 or 4 weeks in the offseason and then hop to another team. And so all sorts of contracts are being broken. Now we're talking about massive contracts, of course, but yeah.
Well, we have an HCC guy. We have an HCC guy in the back room. Oops, he just dropped out. He was having some trouble when it came in. He was back here and dropped out on us. He'll be back. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, and also that the fact that the Big Ten no longer has a contract with ESPN and ABC, where we're going to see a football season in 2024, where for the first time since the beginning of college football on television, there will not be Big Ten on ABC/ESPN. And so if ESPN was still in contract with the Big Ten, I think we would see a different dynamic with the grant of rights than we do now.
Slim Shady Canes, glad you dropped in with us, man. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing.
Well, we're sitting here talking about the ACC and the grant of rights, and Mark said a while ago that he felt like 2 teams the Big Ten should go after would be FSU and Miami. You'd probably like that, wouldn't you?
Well, I'm going to be honest. Most people are just looking at scenarios where the ACC disappears. I don't think it's going to happen. But I don't think ESPN wants to lose millions of dollars that they've already invested into a network. And he was talking about the whole grant of rights thing a minute ago. Yes, we see people get out of stuff every day, but at the same time, you see plenty of people not able to get out of stuff contractually. And I don't see the Big Ten wanting to fork over, somewhere in the neighborhood of $120 million a team to get them out of a contract.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I don't know that you heard everything I had to say, which was legal people say that this contract is airtight, or to be more specific, written in such a way that it's airtight because it's not airtight. It's so clumsy and awkwardly written that it basically can't be broken.
I get it.
I was just making the comment that I've never come across, and I'm no lawyer, come across a contract that couldn't be broken in some way So I'm giving like a 2% window there.
Yeah, but it would be a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I don't know that the Big
Go
Ten
ahead.
would have to worry
Well,
about the money standpoint. Why would they be concerned with the money? That's up to the university to decide whether it's worth breaking contract to jump ship.
Right.
yeah, and I mean, to your point of contracts, I think what's much more likely is the ACC just expands. And y'all were talking about Notre Dame a minute ago. I think the money's going to get too big for Notre Dame to just brush it off like they tend to do with joining a conference. And right now, contractually, they can't join any conference but the ACC.
True.
So I think that's much more likely as to what, Notre Dame and another team join the ACC, and then they just renegotiate the TV deal.
But
Because obviously it would be appropriate in that case.
But Slim Shady, if Notre Dame is making more money or a comparable amount of money as a non-member of the ACC in football, then why would they jump into the ACC when that amount of money is what, $30 million, $31 million per year?
Last year it was more closer to 40. In which Notre Dame, even if it was at 30, what Notre Dame's making from their NBC deal is less. It's in the neighborhood of 20 to 25.
Sure, but why didn't they
But
do
when
that
you
years
say-
ago?
When you say 40, though, Slim Shady, you're talking about the playoff money and everything that came in. Well,
Well, the ACC didn't
All
have a
the
team in the playoffs.
but all the bowl money and stuff, though, right?
I would have to look at it again. What we
What-
were able to pull up was what North Carolina got. Because Miami being a private school, and Duke being a private school, Boston College being a private, school, these teams don't have to post. So we're having to look at, what North Carolina got and that kind of stuff.
So here's my
Midnight
guess. Where you're getting those numbers and they're higher than the overall average contract number is my understanding that the ACC, and one of the smart things that they did in this TV contract, which was little, but it increases per season. So even though the average is like 32 million, we're on the other side of that, and it's increasing every year to the conclusion of the contract.
Right.
That's the average, but they're doing better than the average from my understanding now.
I believe you're right. Yeah. I believe you hit the nail on the head. And, then like I said, if they do go the route of expanding themselves like other conferences have, I imagine that deal gets renegotiated and everybody's money goes up as well.
It only cost
Midnight
Maryland
Magic.
$31 million to leave the ACC. I just
31
looked it up.
million. Yeah. Midnight Magic Musings, thank you for the donation. He says, will Liberty benefit from pending moves? I don't know if Liberty would, to be honest with you. Just throwing that out there.
I'm kind of with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Liberty just went into the Sun Belt, didn't they? Not too long ago. So
Yes. Well,
so I mean, I don't see them jumping ship there anyway. There wouldn't be. I mean, going to a Power 5, yeah, but not going
I
anywhere
think
else.
they would jump ship. I don't know that the ACC would take them on.
Right.
This train has left the station, but shoot, I posted a video 5 years ago that I thought the ACC should go after UCF.
Yeah, but what the ACC should do is get Notre Dame in there as football, and maybe bring in, I don't know, a West Virginia or something, just somebody else to help shore up the conference, and that would be in the same region. And now for the Big 12 fans out there, I'm not saying I want West Virginia out of the Big 12 to the ACC because I think the ACC is better. I'm just saying that. I'm saying that because West Virginia don't fit in the Big Damn 12.
No.
we can't go to no games. We can't
Do you
go to
think
any
West
games.
Virginia would leave?
I don't know. I mean, how could they? They just signed this grant of rights in the Big 12. It goes all the way to 2030 or 2031. So, I mean, they put ink to paper, from what I understand, on that. So they would have to break that contract, and that would cost a fortune, a lot more than they'd make in the ACC.
Well, I guess it would all just depend on whether or not a move of them and somebody else would make more money in the ACC. Because I think geographically it fits. I think as far as some old Big East rivalries, it fits. And as far as it would be a fit for the ACC as well, because I think you're going to see more people look at group of 5 teams, because now it's not necessarily, what can this team bring to your conference necessarily. It's getting into TV markets that you're not in. And that's where I would kind of disagree with Mark about a UCF, or I've heard some people say South Florida, because the ACC is already in the Florida TV market twice. If you're going to expand, you need to expand in TV markets you're not in. That's the name of the game.
Yeah, and unfortunately, and this is a fact. The Pittsburgh market, Pitt don't own the Pittsburgh market. The Pittsburgh Steelers own it, and Pitt is way down the list. And West Virginia is pulling just as good of numbers in Pittsburgh as Pitt is. And then in West Virginia, you also get Washington, and a large part of Maryland and Ohio. So you got a good market there with West Virginia. But I just don't think West Virginia would leave the Big 12 now, since they've signed the grant of rights. Now, on top of that, I don't think the ACC is ever going to get Notre Dame to join in football. But that is what would save the conference right now, should Florida State and Clemson decide to jump ship.
Well, I'm much less worried about that than a lot of people. I think as far as, the ADs coming out and making statements, I think that's a whole lot of saber rattling.
You think they're bluffing? You think they're bluffing, and the ACC will call the bluff?
I don't necessarily think it's bluffing. I think they're saying what, things they want to happen, but I don't necessarily think they have the ability to make them happen. Not when you start talking about the numbers.
But it would be like it wouldn't happen overnight. It would be a transition, 4 or 5 years probably. They might go ahead and announce now, but it'd be 4 or 5 years before they ever left.
I think my personal opinion on what they were doing is, trying to get some of the lead out of the rear end of the ACC to get them to do something, which I'm sure they're probably working on behind the scenes. They're just haven't come out publicly and said anything.
But there are some huge brands over there. And with me, I'm older, so I can remember the days of Boston College being a powerhouse. I can remember the Doug Flutie days and things. Boston College used to be a team to be reckoned with, as well as Syracuse, as well as Pitt.
Yep.
But now there's no bigger brands over there than Florida State, Miami, and Clemson, and UNC. There's just such big brands there. This TV contract, I don't imagine, would be too attractive to anybody in the ACC right now.
Well, I'm sure as it sits right now, no. But like I said, you're coming in with the knowledge that, we expand the conference. Obviously changes are going to happen with that TV deal. It's going to get renegotiated. And especially if they're bringing in a big fish like Notre Dame, absolutely a TV deal is getting renegotiated. That goes without saying.
Yeah. So Tim Brangley says, that said, there are some great G5s out there. USF, Tulane, SMU, San Diego State, FSU, etc. FSU. Yeah. Great group of 5 team. I figured he would throw Miami in there.
Yeah. Throwing Florida State coming off that season.
Florida State, Miami's had a good season too. We never got as bad as Florida State did, though.
He meant Fresno State, he said. I think the next teams that are going to, in the group of 5 that'll be getting in the conference, are San Diego State, of course, and SMU. I think if the Pac-12 would expand further, it'd probably bring Rice and Tulane. Over on the East Coast, I think Memphis and App State are probably the next 2 in line, I would think.
Yeah, makes sense. I can't think of anybody else out there. Air Force would be off the board because of their military standing, but they're somewhat attractive as our Army and Navy. But again, that's something that most Power 5 conferences don't want to deal with, and they don't want to join.
Sam Shady, you got any more questions or anything, man? Or you want to just sit and talk for a while? Have anything?
I'm actually curious. I know Mark was fixing to push back on something I said. I'm curious to see what he was going to say about my Florida State comment.
Well, I was going to push back on how bad Miami's been at times, roughly in that 5-7 range, with Florida State coming off of 5-7 the year before last. So, I would agree that most likely that Florida State team 2 years ago was worse than pretty much any Miami team we've seen, although Miami's throwing out a 5-7 as well. So they both underachieved. That we'll just say that.
Didn't Florida State have a 3 or 4 win season too?
Yeah, in the COVID year when they only played 9 games.
Well, I'm just looking at the fact from what was that it was either 2017 or 2017. I don't remember if they made a bowl in 2017.
Yes.
I know they didn't in 18. They did in 19. They didn't in 20.
No, they did in 17 and 18.
Yeah, they played West Virginia in 17.
No, he's talking about Florida State.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about Miami.
Florida State went to the Birmingham Bowl in 17, and they went to the Sun Bowl and played Arizona State in 18.
See, Florida State fans told me that Sun Bowl was 19. Okay. That's what I get for listening.
Or they missed in 18 and went in 19.
Yeah, that's the way they told me.
No, they don't know what they're talking about. 2019, Florida State, that's the year Willie Taggart got fired.
Okay, yeah.
I wouldn't challenge Mark Rogers to anything.
Well, anyway, the thing I wanted to get to was the Notre Dame addition to the ACC. That's what I wanted to get to, was the Notre Dame addition to the ACC. So if the average ACC team is worth, you're telling me $40 million is what they're currently getting through the TV contract.
Yeah, then, it was a little under. It was like 37, 38.
Yeah. So then if you do the, let's say Notre Dame's worth, I don't know, are they worth 60 million by themselves? So if they add 60 million a year to the entirety of the conference, and then it's divided by 14, it's going to give it like a $5 million bump for everyone. Unless they give them an unequal slice of the pie.
Well,
so I don't know.
If we're gonna look at current numbers, I mean, their TV deals at the $21, $24 million a year range. I mean, that's got to be their value right there. The market sets it, and that's where their market value is.
Well, based on a contract that they signed quite a while ago.
Oh yeah, I understand that.
I'm giving you more leverage toward your part of the argument that it would be worth it to Notre Dame to join.
Right.
I want to take up for Slim Shady and Miami here, because he says, by how many points did Miami lose to Middle Tennessee again? Now, let me say, every team loses a game every once in a while that they're not supposed to lose. But in Miami's defense, they were handicapped because Kevin Steele was their defensive coordinator. Now Alabama's handicapped, but they were. But Miami was handicapped
with anything. And Mark knows because I've thrown several comments in Mark Rogers' comment section. And me and the Miami fan base are at odds at what Miami's problem is. Listen, I wasn't mad about it because the day Mario got hired, so obviously several people went live on YouTube. My gut reaction is Miami was going 6-6. I was a game off.
Just because that's not an indictment, I'm guessing, on Mario for you. That just means you think he's got a lot of work to do.
Exactly. Hey, we knew about the culture problems. The constant turnover negates your talent level because talent can't develop when you've had the level of turnover that Miami's had. So that you're absolutely right. That wasn't an indictment on Mario at all. That was just the situation he was walking into. He had a lot of work to do.
So, comment here from I don't know how you say it, Keelani. Says college football is in a hurry to make its TV money. Its audience is getting older and dying out. Of the 16.6 million who watched TCU UGA, only 6 million were between 18 and 49, less than 700,000 under 18. I don't believe that. I don't. I'll tell you right now, I've been a college football fan for going on 50 years, and I can tell you that there's more fans today than there was back in the 80s that I can think of right now. I mean, there are a lot more fans today than there was in the 80s.
Well, I also think
Now,
in the age of streaming and games being broadcast on YouTube, whether legally or illegally, that's going to mess with TV numbers.
Yeah, exactly. West Virginia played a basketball game the other night against Kansas. I couldn't get it on TV, but I was able to watch it on YouTube. I had to go to 3 different channels because it kept getting shut down, but I got to watch the whole game. Just had to watch it on 3 different YouTube channels. We got somebody else coming in with us here. We got Tiger Baskins. What's going on, Tiger?
Hello. Yeah, this is Tiger. Oh, you said what's going on? Nothing much, man. Just out on the clock, but you guys are more important than my job, so I was like, I'm gonna get on here with you guys.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, what's up? What's the conversation, big dogs?
We're just talking about the ACC and the Pac-12 and the Big Ten and SEC. We're talking about everything, but we're talking about mainly like FSU and Clemson making their announcements about the Pac-12 and TV numbers. So, you got anything to add in there, Tiger, about that stuff? Any thoughts? Bring your brilliance in here and solve all the problems.
I say, if we install a Jandy's in every single college football athletics program, the players will be happy. No, I'm lying. You kind of put me on the spot, dude. I have no idea. I'm just gonna agree with you guys on this and wait on the next topic to come up before I speak.
Tiger,
Well,
Tiger, I'm going to let you take my spot, and I will duck out here. But appreciate you guys having me. And Joey, thanks so much for the invite.
Mark, before you go, Mark, you can find Mark over at College Football right here on YouTube. And Mark, so we started this network for merchandise. And so you can go to thevoiceofcollegefootball.com and get to Mark's merchandise store. You can go to goldenbluedude.com and get to Mark's merchandise store as well. You can go to pigskinpete.com and get to Mark's merchandise or Golden Blue Dudes or Pigskin Pete's. We have a whole network together that are all together. So you can go to any of those sites and buy anything you like. So you can go to goldenbluedude.com right now. Go over and pick you up a Mark Rogers t-shirt or a Pigskin Pete t-shirt, whatever you'd like. But Mark, yeah, I appreciate you coming in, man, and everything. Glad you're here.
Be
All
safe,
thanks
Mark.
to you, Joey.
All right,
Be
we'll
safe,
see you
Mark.
later.
Slim Shady, good to talk to you. You guys have a good night.
Yes, sir.
So, Slim, I know you was on Pigskin Pete there earlier. y'all were having a conversation about all this. Did y'all leave off somewhere that you wanted to pick up on? Because a lot of those people come over here.
Well, I guess I'll get your opinion on something because we got, some of those guys' opinion on it. Obviously, everybody wants money. Everybody wants more money. Nobody's going to discount that. But the conversation is going to, well, Clemson stays in the ACC as it is. Clemson as a program will just fall off. And I don't believe that. I mean, last time I checked, just because they're bringing in less money because of the ACC as compared to another school, that Dabo is going to forget how to recruit or coach.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that 100%.
And they'll find a way to get more money. They'll find money.
Yeah, and the facilities. So the Big Ten, the SEC are going to be able to invest more into facilities and have more options there. But like y'all say, they'll to be able to do that stuff. Florida State, same way.
And then look what happened. 2 off seasons ago, you get the Oklahoma, Texas announcement. Last off season, you get the USC, UCLA announcement. Yeah, well, we're like a month and a half into the off season. So for all we know, we're 2 months away from, Notre Dame and whoever are joining the ACC, and it gets announced this off season. There's still a whole lot of off season for things to happen.
Yeah, I know it. That's what I started the show out tonight saying, college football is the gift that just keeps on giving this year. There is no off season because we have all this stuff going on that, we still have a lot of people watching, a lot of people interested, and that's good for college football that so many people are interested, because while you're learning about all this conference realignment and what's going on in the news, you also pick up little tidbits about college football that you may not even known. Watching all these.
I'll be right back, guys.
Okay, TB. That's a pretty cool thing.
I think this is something I don't hear brought up very often. And I realize that, most teams, conferences, fans are looking at the dollar signs. But I also think there's a component that they're all looking at that we may not be paying as much attention to. I don't think they're going to end up making as drastic changes as some people think, because they don't want to become like the NFL. College football does realize that they have a lot of people that are fans of college football and not the NFL because it isn't the NFL. And
I want to give you a
Go ahead.
I wanted to give you a question, a scenario. So I was on a phone conversation the other day talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about conference realignment. And I said, it might end up with 2 super conferences. It might end up at the SEC and the Big Ten, just add some more teams and it's done. He said, well, how many teams would they add? 4? 8? What's the magic number? And I said, well, probably 8. Add 8 more teams to each conference. 2 super conferences would be done. But here's the hard part about that. Tell me what 8 teams would go. Tell me what 8 teams you would have in there. Who would you add? Tell me the 8 teams. Who would you leave out?
I don't think
if you had to add 8 teams. If you had to add 8 teams to the SEC right now, and 8 teams to the Big Ten right now, can you think of the 8 teams that you would do it with?
I mean, you're guaranteed to leave some people out.
Yeah.
And I don't think the SEC or the Big Ten wants that. I mean, hell, the SEC commissioner has come right out and said, we're not looking to add anybody else.
Right.
I mean, until proven otherwise, I got no reason not to believe him.
I agree, that he said that. But if you're the SEC and Clemson comes knocking on the door, are you going to close that door?
Right now, yes, I do think so.
So Twisted Rooster says that South Carolina is spending $2 billion to upgrade around their stadium, and Miami can't even get a stadium.
Miami doesn't want a stadium. Why would we? We're not paying anything to play at Hard Rock, just like the Dolphins weren't paying anything to play in the Orange Bowl. See, I'm the wrong person to get into that with. I could care less. I'll go to Hard Rock for all the games and be happy.
Yeah, but doesn't it hurt the student section though?
No,
I'm curious. I don't know for sure. Just asking.
Inevitably, it always comes back to an on-campus stadium. Can anybody tell me when Miami has ever had an on-campus stadium?
No, I can't tell you.
Okay. I rest my case.
Yeah. And Dave says he chokes on Pepsi and don't want to become NFL. Too late for that. Yeah, it's getting to where it's more looking more like NFL football every day. So
I hope not. I really hope not. There's a reason I'll sit down all day and watch college football, but I only watch one NFL game.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to run. I've got another show at 10 o'clock, so we're going over to Tide Guy to play trivia. If anybody'd like to go over to Tide Guy and watch or play, join in, whatever, we're gonna be over there. But Slim, and tell you anything you want to add? We always give everybody their final thoughts and introduce yourself. Tell us where they can find you at. If you got Twitter, whatever, let everybody know.
I ain't got none of it. I'm not even gonna lie. I just bounce around YouTube, and some people like some opinions I got, and some people like to argue with me about my opinions.
I like your opinions. I'm always the type that I don't see no need in arguing about it, because honestly, they're just opinions, and everybody's got their own opinion about things, but probably none of us are right. I mean, seriously, probably none of us are right.
The debate is fun. I'll say that. I do enjoy.
Yeah.
I have fun with the debate.
It's a different mindset when you are on the board at one of these universities and you're making these decisions. They think completely different. They're not thinking about college football.
Nope.
They're not thinking about that. They're thinking about everything but that, and it's a small piece that they consider.
Yeah.
But
you might have
anyway,
one
all right.
person on that board that does, but that's about it.
Yeah. Well, Sam, I appreciate you coming in, man, and stuff, and giving us a ACC view, man.
No problem, buddy.
All right, guys, we're going to get out of here for tonight. Golden Booty will be back with you tomorrow night. Like I say, I'm going to shoot over to Tie Guy. You guys want to head over there with me? Let's do it. But until then, everyone have a great night, and we'll see you later.